Hello YouTube friends, Ben Ochart here. Thank you for tuning in. If you know me, you know I love big fish. Big cichlids like these here are what I've sort of specialized in and been all about for the last few years. So I'm going in a very, very different direction in this video. So let's go ahead and get right into it. A while back, I talked about this aquarium. This is a Hygger bowed front aquarium. It's about 8 gallons. It's bowed in the front, you can see here. And it comes with a very nice Hygger light fixture, LED light fixture. You can see there. And it comes with a nice built-in filtration unit that goes into the back. I talk about it in a video. I'll include a link if you want more of the details about this particular tank from Hygger. It's referred to as a Hygger Horizon HG 906 bow front aquarium. This is the filtration. It's got a little spray bar on it. The top of it just pops off. This area here pops off, and it's got a sponge section, and the bottom here is where you put in some activated charcoal. And I'm going to pull this sponge out, and I'm going to replace that with media that's been sitting in the sump for quite some time. So I'm going to put some media from an established filter in this section. And I'll leave the charcoal in there, even though normally I don't use charcoal, activated carbon, whatever you want to call it. So this just pops in right there, and then this just pops into a section in the back of the tank right there, just spray bar, and it'll just spray water onto this, creating aeration, creating some oxygen. It comes with a very nice built-in background, as you can see. Very nice little background. Holds about 8 gallons. I was going to be doing a community tank with the fish that you see in here. There are some embers in there, some lemons, some red serpe, and a whole variety of plants that were sent to me by the Aquarium Co-op and by my channel sponsor, James Largo, over at the Cichlid Shack. There's even a little rummy nose in there, and just a variety of fish. But what I decided to do was take a very different direction. I went over to my local aquarium store, the Aquatic Critter, and I made the mistake of looking at the Betta fish. In this tank here, there is a fish that is referred to as a blue mustard gas Betta. And he's absolutely beautiful. The blue in the body and the tail, beautiful dorsal fin that turns into an orangey yellow. That blue mustard gas Betta is the fish that's going to be living inside of this Hygger Horizon. I am going to be putting plants in it, and I'm going to be using some special fluorite black by Chem is going to be the substrate. So it's going to be very plant friendly. And I'm also going to be using some of the plant vitamins that are offered by the Aquarium Co-op. Some of this Easy Green, some of the Easy Green pump. You give it 1 pump for every 10 gallons. So every time I do a water change on this little tank, I'll give it 1 pump of this. And I'm also going to be using some tabs, some of these easy root tabs under the substrate in areas where I'm going to be including some of the plants that are going to get pushed into the substrate. So let's go ahead and get this tank set up. And because I'll be using some filter material from an established tank, I should be able to be good to go immediately and be able to bring over Mr. Mustard, this mustard gas blue Betta, from this little 5-gallon tank over to this 8-gallon tank. Let's go ahead and clean up some of this fluorite black from Chem. I've gone ahead and sped it up because it did take me quite a few rinses to get it to run clean. As you can see here, maybe because it's a clay base, I'm not sure, but it did require quite a bit of rinsing before I felt satisfied that I could put it into the tank. As you can see, I had to rinse quite a bit. It says on the bag that that it was rinsed at the factory, but that some light rinsing might be required. I tell you, that was very dirty sand, very dirty. And if that's what they call light rinsing. Anyway, whatever. Let's go ahead and get this in here. 2 of the smaller bags of fluorite black ended up giving me a substrate of about 1 inch to 1.5 inches, which I think is going to be plenty for the plants I'm going to be putting in there. You do need to leave a little bit of a gap between the bottom of the substrate and the bottom of the 3D background, because that's what's going to be pulling water up into the filtration and then up and out from the spray bar. So let's go ahead and fill the tank up. Again, I'm doing this in a speeded up fashion. You don't need to actually see this in real time. I'm going to be using Aquarium 15-watt flat heater, and that's just going to sit right here against the tank. You're probably not even going to notice it. Like with most heaters, you want them to acclimate for about 15 minutes to 30 minutes before you plug them in. And same thing when you're going to pull a heater out. You want to go ahead and unplug it and let it sit in the tank for about 15 to 30 minutes before you pull it out of the tank, just sort of a heater acclimation. So I'm going to let this tank clear up a little bit, and then I'm going to go ahead and introduce some of the media from the sump that is rich in beneficial bacteria. I took the filter sock out to make it easier to retrieve some of the media out of the sump. This media has been in this sump for many, many months. So let's go ahead and get some out of there. It's pretty bacteria rich, as you can see. Pretty gunked up. Actually, the perfect kind of media you want to use. This is the filter that comes with it. It's custom cut to fit. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to cut a piece of this pinky and it's not going to fit in there perfectly. I don't care about that. All I care about is the fact that this has beneficial bacteria in it. Nice and gunked up, exactly the way I want it. So that's the filter media for that tank. Nasty and perfect at the same time. Now, the mistake you can make is you can put this in the tank without having conditioned the water. You have to make sure that the water is conditioned in that little tank, or you'll put this in the cartridge, you'll drop the filter into it, and you're going to go ahead and kill off the beneficial bacteria. Let's put this back in the sump, let it keep growing bacteria. Let's go ahead and make sure that little tank is, that 8-gallon tank is conditioned, and we'll drop this cartridge in, and this will be the filter cartridge for that tank. So I used a little bit of the Fritz Complete in this tank, and then I dropped in the filter. Let's go ahead and see how that filter works after I plug it in. Well, it works perfectly. Creates a little bit of a waterfall effect on the rocks. You don't want a lot of flow in a tank that's going to have a Betta in it. Because of their big fins, they just get blown around. I'm going to use a little bit of this. This is called Monster 360. It's another Fritz product. I thank my friends at Fritz for sending that over. And I'm going to go ahead and just put a little bit. It's one cap. It's one cap for 25 gallons. So a little tank like this, with the displacement that you have from substrate, you really just need just a little teeny bit. So I'm going to let this run until tomorrow, and then when it's nice and clear, we'll go ahead and drop some plants and go from there. By the next morning, things had started to clear up pretty well, and it was time to go ahead and get the plants ready. They were in those foam bases that you see often in pet stores. All you need to do really is just pull them apart. You can use a little water. You can use a fork if you want. Some people use a fork. I notice the MD Fish Keeper channel uses a fork to kind of break that stuff off. But you want to clean it off there because it will tend to kind of cloudy up the water. So I break it off, and while trying to, as best I can, to preserve the roots of the plants. A lot of these had some very, very well developed roots, being Anubias, and I also had some swords in there and a few other plants. But again, I'm going to speed this up because there's just no need for you to get through this in real time. You can see how long the roots were on that Anubias. So I got them all cleaned up and ready to go into the tank. The Anubias had some roots that were pretty long, so I went ahead and if you're a fan of Rachel O'Leary, I remember her saying that if you trim the roots on the Anubias, that encourages growth. So I went ahead and did that, and that'll help the roots to then grow around the area where I'm going to be wedging the Anubias. A lot of micro bubbles on the tank. That's normal as the tank starts to heat up with the heater, and you get a difference in the temperature of the room versus the water. You are going to start to get a lot of those little micro bubbles. They will clear up eventually and no longer be a problem. As you can see, the Anubias, there were lots of little crevices in the background, in the 3D background that comes with this aquarium, and I was able to wedge those plants in there. And what that does now is it is it allows the plant to then start to grow, and those roots will wrap around and grab that background. I used some of these root tabs from the Aquarium Co-op. I put them in the substrate in the areas where I was going to be using rooted plants. You can see they look like a little capsule, and they will add nutrients that these plants will then be able to absorb. So for the plants that are going to be in the substrate, they'll use the root tab for nutrient, and I'll be using some of the pump, some of the liquid vitamins and minerals that are offered by the Aquarium Co-op, and those will provide the Anubias with plenty of nutrients that they can pull out of the water column. I've sped this up a bit, since again you don't need to see it in real time. Kind of a small little Amazon sword there. Sometimes you got to wedge the Anubias in a few times to get them to stick, but once they start actually shooting out roots, they have a rhizome that that you don't want to put in the substrate, a thick sort of finger-like, and looks like a root, but it's not, and then that shoots out the roots. Makes them ideal for applications like this. I also once heard that Anubias are bitter tasting, and so they're good for tanks that have fish that like to eat plants, but I have not found that to be the case with cichlids. I think cichlids have a very short memory, and they simply bite it, and then they bite it again, and so they just sort of forget that it was sour and then go after it again. So now when the cichlids were small, the Anubias did okay, but after the cichlids put on some size, they just proceeded to destroy the Anubias. It was a $100 experiment that I conducted. I'll put a link in the video so you can actually you can see the what took place. I had some beautiful plants, and they were over time just shredded. So here it is, planted up, and it's a little foggy from having stirred up the substrate to get the plants in place. So we'll give that a day so it can clear up, but you can see it's starting to take some shape now. I'm going to top off the water, and but I'm probably going to have to come up with some type of a cover, especially if I'm going to be using this as a Betta tank, because I've discovered that Bettas will jump. One of the plants that one of the rooted plants, I was able to break up into 5 or 6 little segments, and I'm hoping that it'll spread. So I went ahead and filled in the area behind the red plant, and that way it can go ahead and just spread out and fill in. Again, I put some of those root tabs down there to provide some nutrients. I'm not going to be using CO2. I think between the Sechem fluorite substrate and the root tabs and liquid plant food that I'll be using in this tank, I think I'm going to have all the nutrients that these plants could possibly need. That's some of that pump from the Aquarium Co-op. I think it's 1 pump for every 10 gallons. I'll probably give it a pump every time I swap out some water. By this point, I was sort of debating a little bit as to whether or not I wanted to put the Betta in here, or whether I wanted to go ahead and move some of the community fish over. I think the lemon tetras, the rummy nose, even the red embers, I think they would look really, really nice swimming around in here. and I don't think it's too small for them. I also did discover as time went on that the heater needed to be swapped out. That flat heater was just not enough. Part of what makes this a good Betta tank is that you do have an adjustable flow on the spray bar, because you don't want to have a lot of water movement with Bettas because of their broad fins. They get blown around, and it's just not an uncomfortable situation. They want a pretty calm situation. This spray bar can be adjusted so that it's a very, very slow flow that creates hardly any water movement. At the same time, you want to have oxygen, so you probably need to add an air stone. You also need a cover for this tank. It does not come with a cover or a heater. And again, those are 2 points which would make it not necessarily a good Betta tank right out of the box. You would need to acquire a heater and create some type of a lid so that your Betta doesn't jump on you. Overall, I like the way it looks. I like the way it's coming together. And you can see I added that much larger heater, which is more in line with the 5 watts per gallon formula. This is one of those condensation trays that you can buy on eBay. I cleaned this one up and I cut it to shape so it would fit around the inserts around the legs of the light fixture, and I fitted it on the top of the tank. So apart from an air stone, which I'm not entirely sure I need because the spray bar is creating some surface breakup, but an air stone probably wouldn't be a bad idea. I really love those red plants. Of course, Anubias I think are beautiful. As you can see, I took about 50% or more of the plants that were in the community tank. Those large Amazon swords I'm just going to leave in there. I think they're a little bit too big for that small Hygger 8-gallon. You can see I have some lemon tetras, some embers, the rummy nose in there. There's some little catfish. Several hours later, you can see it's really clearing up well. I think adding that Monster 360 by Fritz, I put a little bit of that Monster 360. I think that helped clear it up. What it does is it adds a good bacteria that just sort of eats the particles that are floating around. Also gives them a little bit of size so they can get picked up by the filter. And of course the filter in here, the filter media, is what I pulled out of the sump. So this tank should actually be ready for fish, since I used a filter media from an established tank, and that has a good amount of beneficial bacteria. So this tank should be ready to roll. There's the lid. And that should keep any fish thinking about jumping, that should keep them in the tank. So overall, I like the look. So there you have it. I just wanted to introduce you to Mr. Mustard, the new Betta fish, and I hope you like him as much as I do. I think he's very pretty, and I think he's going to have a pretty good home in that 8-gallon Hygger Horizon aquarium. Thank you for tuning in. Any tips that you have, I am brand new to keeping Bettas. Any tips that you have, please go ahead and note them in the comments below. I'm particularly interested if what do you think about adding plants with the Betta, and what do you think about snails and tank mates? Maybe throw a couple neons in there. I mean, you tell me. You probably have more experience than I do with Betta fish, so let me know what you think. Okay, thank you for tuning in, and be sure to hit that like, hit that like if you like the content of this channel, and the bell so you get notifications when new content is uploaded. And join me on Saturday. We'll talk about this and a whole lot of other stuff at the Cichlids and Coffee live stream every Saturday at 11 a.m. Central. That's 9 a.m. Pacific, noon Eastern. I hope to see you there. And if you want to support the channel, join the Garage Gang and become a member of the Patreon group. Details on the Patreon program are in the description under the video. Thank you to all my Patreons. Thank you to you for watching, and talk to you next time. Bye-bye.